We go to Jerry's Deli, and then we got into like some kind of altercation or tiff.
Yeah.
Bobby Brown. All those friends are still our friends. Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jerry O'Connell, Macaulay Culkin.
Right.
So she grew up with Donald Faison coming to my house parties when I was in high school because they were like, what's a real party like? You know? And then here comes Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Paris Hilton's got a pocket full of...
And the next thing I know, the guy's producing a movie starring Christopher Walken, like a giant movie.
It won the 2013 Annie Award, which is like the Oscars for animation. Those that can endure will be rewarded.
Hi, welcome to 90who10. This is another episode. I'm your host, Jessica Entner, and I'm sitting here with my co-host,
Dan Eisenstein.
And today we have an amazingly special guest. They're all special, aren't they? I say that every time.
They are.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Before I forget, that's the thing you have to do. We have father, husband, director, producer, and brother of Tara Reid, Mr. Tommy Reid.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me here, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
So fun to already pre-talk with you.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear all the stories.
I know, and I'm sober. This is crazy.
Hold on.
Yeah.
That's an understatement.
Hold on, I just came from MedMen.
Well, we just found out we have that in common, so that's good.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I actually have never met you. This is the first time I
never
have
met you
you.
either.
I know. It's very nice to meet you. We've probably been in the same room together before, but this is the first time we've gotten to.
I think you would have remembered.
Well, LA's a big city, but and right back at you. So, so you guys are friends and have known each other for it's
almost
time.
25 years I've known you, Tommy. No, we were there was
it April, May?
So he and I met in New York at the New York Film Academy.
Okay.
Yeah. Dave Faustino, whose name's come up a million times on this podcast.
We should just call it David Faustino's friend.
Yeah. This is right when Married with Children ended. He said, hey, I'm going to take this course in New York. It's an 8-week course, and we're going to make 16 short films over 8 weeks. Do you want to come take this course with me? And I said, yeah, for sure. Let's do that. A couple days before we're about to leave, he gets a pilot with Whoopi Goldberg, and he says, I'm going to be a week late. So you go and you start, which I wasn't too thrilled about, but I went by myself. And the very first day, I end up sitting next to this guy.
And he walks in like a black leather trench coat.
Yeah, that's right.
And we didn't know if he was Tony Soprano or...
There was no Tony Soprano then.
Exactly. But I'm like, who the hell is this guy? He's big, he looks, he's very very nice. And so of course I buddy up next to him because, a small guy like me has got to always be friends with the big guys just in case.
Tommy was like a comic. He had me cracking up the entire morning. There was a Canadian guy in the class. There was one other American girl and then a lot of Europeans in the class. And who barely spoke English. And Tommy had me rolling the entire time.
So we smoke a joint during lunch and we go have lunch and everything. And so we started buddy up and I'm like, okay, so you got to come back and you got to make a film crew of 4 for your whole duration now. So this is going to be like your brothers. So as you go into filmmaking and everyone has to rotate from DP, director, cinematographer, and basically PA. And so week 1, you do this and everything. So I'm like, okay, cool. I got Dan and then Justin O'Connor. Was it Justin Connor?
Justin Connor.
Justin Connor was the BMXer. So I'm looking at Dan, okay, well, let's close the gap and let's get that, one girl who's asking all the questions.
She was really smart.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Okay, now myself being a Buckeye, I'm like, you got to go with the smart people. Once I find out he's a Beverly Hills Jew, I'm like, oh my God, this is done. Yeah. Done. So he's like, I got 1 spot left. Yeah, so let's go get either Rolf, the German DP guy, or go get the smart girl.
I was like, well, no, my friend, we gotta hold this spot for my friend who's coming a week later. And Tommy's like, no, we're not gonna do that. Your friend's late. That's his problem. We're not gonna be a week behind. He's not gonna put me behind. And I'm like, listen, Tommy, it's my friend. He's like, no. I'm like, well, do you ever watch Married with Children? It's Bud Bundy. And then he pulls out of his ass. He's like, do you know
Bobby Jacoby?
I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Bobby.
Okay. And so Tommy had been out to LA the week before. Tara was out here working and kind of breaking into the business. And she was dating a guy named Steve Burton who was on General Hospital.
It's actually 95 it came out here.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 years before.
Yep.
And ends up hanging out with Bobby because of Steve. And Bobby and Dave have been close friends forever and ever. So he knew that connection. Right. And I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. Yeah, of course I know Bobby.
He was part of that Tremors success and everything like that. But what happened was in 95, it came out and Tara was friends with, a bunch of TV
Yeah.
people,
Yep.
okay? Like in there, and she was dating Jason Quartermain at the time, Steve Burton. So I crashed on their couch, and basically was like, hey, I'm going to be an intern. So I wind up being an intern for Viacom and MTV.
This is why you're going to OSU, right? That's like
Yes,
the summer.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me come out and see if I want to live in New York or LA when I'm done with college and see what I want to do.
You're from Jersey.
I'm from New
originally.
Jersey, yeah, right outside New York City. So I'm a bridge and tunnel person, as they call it in the city. But New York's my backyard. So how I met Bobby Jacoby was after working at Viacom, and I basically did 2 weeks there, and I fucking hated it. Hated the person I was an intern for, and I'm like, I'm out. So I just want to hang out now and just kind of do what the actors do, which is nothing, and kind of go out and party. So we go out to some parties, and I meet Mario Lopez, Natasha Sigliotti or something like that, Danielle Harris, who was a big child star, and Bobby Jacoby. And, he did this movie, Tremors and stuff like that. Cool. Well, Bobby was the only one that was cool to me because Tara wasn't famous at the time. She was aspiring, did some small recurring spots on, what's that famous soap opera, not General Hospital?
Days of Our Lives?
Days of Our Lives. Yeah. Okay, so she got to meet with some of the crew and got to know some of them. That's how she met Steve. So she was dating Steve, and Bobby was the only one that would hang out with me. We would go to the parties. Someone's like, oh, who's this guy? Well, he's not a fucking actor, or he's not Spielberg's friend or kid. So they didn't want to hang out with me. So Bobby was the only one that would hang out with me. So he wound up getting really messed up one night. We were at a party up in the hills where it was empty. Vladi Divac and Robert Ory show up. It was typical Beverly Hills. A big party in the hills and everything. Yeah. And so we wind up getting messed up. He's like, let's go have some food late night at Jerry's Deli. So we go to Jerry's Deli, and then we got in some kind of altercation or a tiff.
Very 90s LA. Yeah.
Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
So next thing you know,
oh my God.
He was saying something, bumped in, picked up a fry off of Bobby's table or something like that. And he just walks around. I'm like, who the fuck are you? I don't care if you're Bobby Brown. And his bodyguards got in our way. And long story short, I'm like, I never forgot it. And I wrote on my hat, fuck LA. I'll never come back to this shithole. And I wore a Mets hat or something like that.
Yeah, when I first met you, you were very anti-LA.
Yeah, I hated it. I'm like, fuck this place. It's terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
But next thing you know, I meet you.
Can you imagine you meet this guy? He's from New Jersey, went to Ohio State. That's all I really know about him. And he pulls out the name of one of my really good friends to confirm that I'm telling the truth, that Dave's coming.
It's a small world.
And we had a great time that summer. That was one of the best experiences of my whole life.
Ever.
We made 16 short films. We all rallied and helped each other. I have a bunch of great pictures. We had so much fun. And we did a lot of partying going out too, which was a lot of fun too.
It was great.
Yeah. And it's funny, we were just talking, Dave, one of his movies that he made, his final picture was Natasha Leggero. He cast her. She was the lead girl in it. Mm-hmm. And then she went on to become, a pretty famous comic and stuff, which is kind of was awesome. I mean, I love that part of the story.
We had a very special group, and, we were very lucky to do what we did. We did things that would never get away with today. It was running around with cell phones everywhere. Yeah. Because Married with Children was such an iconic show at the time, we were able to do things like shut down Times Square.
What?
Without a film permit. Literally, we closed off one street corner, and we got to shoot. A limousine would come back up, and we'd have the cops now be like, hey, guys, you guys have no permit. And I'm like, and Dan's rolling, Tommy, go talk to him. And I'm like, hey, guys, we got Bud Bundy over here. They're like, really? Can I just take a picture with him real quick? And you guys, I got it. And we would do that.
Tommy would be like, you guys can't film here. And I'd be like, Tommy, go. Tommy had the gift of gab, right? And I'd say, Tommy, go talk to them. Go talk to them, Tommy. And Tommy's talking to them. And while he's talking, we're filming. And by the time he's done and everybody's taking a picture with Dave, we're done shooting the scene.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
So you guys both went to this film school, and it was a summer program.
Summer program, right.
So were you, obviously you'd been to LA, you're like, fuck this place, it's fucking weird. Mm-hmm. And it is. Being from here, it's a weird place to be, but I love it. Once you went back to New York and then you're in film school, what was your plan to become, did you want to come back to LA?
So what happened was when I graduated at Ohio State, I graduated finance and economics. So I wanted to be a trader. And so I did my 2-week observation in the pits. So to do futures trading, you got to go through this whole 2-week training to get your book of business and to buy your seat. So I was about to buy my seat. And as you're about to buy your seat, which then was like $50,000. Now I think it's like $300,000. It's crazy what it costs just to pay to play, if you will. I go back to my dad and I'm like, there's no way I want to do this. This is terrible. This guy's beating this rich kid for like a half of a point, to go at a quarter of a point on everything he's buying. This kid's losing money every day, but he's coming back with a new purse every day to get his legs, and this guy's just milking him. I'm like, I can't deal with that. So I told my dad that. I'm like, at least if I make a bad movie, you could hold it. It's tangible, and you could watch it. Okay, and then you have an opinion whether it sucks, you love it, or you hate it. Whatever, you're going to have something that comes from that, and that's what was the turning point for me. I'm like, well, I want to go to film school. So he's like, you got to graduate Ohio State, get your economics degree. You'll fall back on that more than you know, which is true. And then that's when I applied, and I'm like, well, I don't want to go to NYU for 4 more years. I want to do something intensive, and that's when I went to New York Film Academy.
And the whole time he's like, I really hate LA. And I'm telling him, I'm like, Tommy, if you want to be a filmmaker, you got to come out to LA, right? And he was on the fence. He was on the fence, but literally a month later, you were out here. It was great. I mean, as I'm thinking about it now, I mean, we really formed this really intensive connection over this 2-3 month period in New York. And, I didn't know, a lot of times people come into your life and you don't know if you're ever going to see. And then you've moved out here. And for the last 25 years, you have been one of my, solid amigos. You are
the catalyst and probably the most influential person in my life that made me move out west.
Oh, man.
Wow.
He always says that to me. Too.
No, but that's awesome.
To really, look, you have a sister who was aspiring at the time. Nothing was really going on with her. She got into Ohio State and was like, she's going to go. My parents were like, okay, enough's enough. You have to go to school. We helped get her in. She got in. In 95, I made my fraternity house, Beta Theta Pi at Ohio State. I was hazing my pledges to write every day. They had to write a letter to Days of Our Lives asking the candy striper, who was Tara's character, to come back on.
Oh my God.
So
God.
they got flooded. So there was like a group of like 25 guys, and for 60 days straight, they had to hand me these letters, and I just sent one thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
So then they're like, we're the fraternity of Ohio State, blah, blah, blah. There's 128 guys. We all watch her. We want her back in. So she wound up getting like an arc of like 14 or 15 episodes from fan mail.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take credit for that.
That's great.
But like it helped her get her sea legs and everything like that. But after we graduated, I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And Dan just was totally like, look, I will take you underneath my wings. I'm like, I can't hang out with my sister all the time. It's kind of a pain in the ass. We'll butt heads. I love her to death, but we're either great or we're just
totally
opposites.
Family.
He didn't need me to take him under his wing. He moved out here and he flourished right away. Right away.
Gift of the gab.
Gift of the gab.
Gift of the gab.
Right away. But
it was awesome.
And then, and he grabbed a few Ohio State buddies to move out here with him.
Right. I heavily recruited.
Yeah, you did. And you moved out here. And what were you doing first got out here?
I worked at an agency. So I worked on a short film. I knew I didn't want to be an assistant director.
Yep.
Then I went to Paradigm and worked for 6.5 months there. And that's when I got the lead to Kill the Irishman, the book. And then I bought the book in galley form before it was even published. But there's some backstories. We have to go back to film school, because why we became so close is because we would have to spend literally, I think class started at 8 a.m. or
it was very intense.
It was like 8 to 5 every day,
Right.
5 days a week inside the classrooms, and then going outside. But like that,
and we were
mandatory. And then you had to work on the weekends.
And then we shoot on the weekends and film at night. And all
So
that.
like I would then have to either take the last train at like 11:30 back, to Hoboken back to Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Or you crashed at my apartment a few times.
And that's where I'm like, you sure? And then like my dad felt so bad. He's like, these fucking guys, like, either they like you or they're going to kick you out soon.
Yeah.
But Dan would always let me crash.
Yeah.
You actually let me crash almost all the time. Faustine was like maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
But like you always let me crash. So you're like, he was my amigo.
Yeah.
So we would put in all this time learning filmmaking. And I thought I was with royalty because I am with Hollywood royalty. His dad, his great grandpa invented
So my grandfather's
Sergei Einstein.
My grandfather's cousin is Sergei Eisenstein. I don't know if you know who that is, Jessica. He invented cutting film. So basically,
editing.
Basically editing. But before Sergei Eisenstein, they had to, they set up the camera, they shoot, then they move it, and they shoot it again.
Yep.
He was the first person to cut film. He invented the expansion of time in film. He invented the montage, the famous scene of the baby carriage going down the steps. That was
Yep.
him. He
Wow.
basically invented the modern music video. So the funny thing is, we're in this class at New York Film Academy, and I'm used to hanging out with Dave, and everywhere we go, people are like kind of starstruck by Dave. And we're in this class, and the teacher like doesn't give a shit. He's like, "You're related to Sergei Eisenstein?" I'm like,
Yeah. So he's like fucking Hollywood.
Yeah,
and now I'm thinking like, I'm going to Hollywood. And I know Dan.
Yeah.
I'm set.
Yeah.
Dave's great. But Dan, I was like, this is great.
And so right at that time, though, that's when Tara was filming The Big Lebowski, which was really kind of a huge breakout role for her.
So wait, you moved to LA right as your sister was breaking on top of it?
So yeah, so when we were
good timing on your part.
when we were at
Sure
the New York
was.
Film Academy, that's when she was filming Big Lebowski. He was telling me about it. And then, which by the way is one of my favorite all-time movies of all time.
I call my kid the dude.
But
the
yeah,
whole thing.
right when he moved out here, that's when it was coming out.
Oh, that's great.
let's go back to New York.
Yeah.
Because some of those times we had, they would literally say, you guys have 20 minutes, go shoot a scene. And we're like, of course, like Dan, Dave, and Justin and I were like, what do we do? We're like, all right. Dan's like, Tommy, go. Dave, get ready. And so my job was, I was the talent coordinator. So I would immediately have to go. And luckily in Union Square Park, there's Wilhelmina and Ford Modeling Agency, literally like a block and a half over from where the school was. So you'd have 1 out of every 10 people would be this gorgeous person walking, male or female, on the street. And so naturally we would ask every girl, I'm like, hey, do you want to be in a short film real quick?
Well, the thing is, being around Dave for so long, I knew how to use it, and I showed Tommy one time, and then he was off to the races. He was running. He had no problem going up to these like Ford models and being like, "Hey, do you know Bud Bundy? You want to be in his movie? Come on over
Exactly
here."
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and finally,
Oh
they're
my
like, can I get my
God.
friend? I'm like, let me check with the producer. It was great.
Oh
It was
my
awesome.
God.
Yeah.
And then so we took that and we ran around New York City like idiots with we don't care. And we could do things that were like, oh, I didn't know you have to get that. I didn't know you have to do that. Oh, really? Well, can we just finish the scene and we'll just move on? So there were things that we were doing that we were way ahead of our time doing, like deferring the film permit.
And we were like
Right.
the only ones like willing to spend a few bucks on our movies.
That's right.
We did, so
we even tried to do color film, but there was like, don't ever do color film. We're like, oh man, these are good. After we're done, it was work hard, play hard.
Yeah,
And so
it was.
Now this is where like, okay, now where are we going tonight, Dan? Well, Dave said we got a reservation at Sky Bar.
Yeah.
And like, oh, okay. So we would go to New York
It was
City.
a Spy Bar, right?
Spy Bar,
Yeah,
whatever.
Spy
it was.
Bar, yeah.
Okay, Sky Bar's the Sunset.
LA, yeah.
So we go to Spy Bar, and then all of a sudden we get in, big long line. Dave rocks up, and then we get in real quick, and we have a table. And then all of a sudden we're like sitting down, and we're like, oh, they walk us to another table, and then next to them is like Marcus Allen, Dr. Dre, and like all these people like sitting down right next to them. And I'll never forget that. Do you remember what happened that night?
Isn't that you knocked over the booze? Is that?
Well, yeah. And then I barfed all over Marcus Allen.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
Because Dr. Dre orders, hey, bud, let's go do a shot. What do you want? And he's like, I want Johnny Walker Blue. So he buys us all shots of Johnny Walker Blue. I can only imagine what that costs for
my God.
8
Yeah.
people.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I sit there chugging. I'm like, oh, that's warm as shit. I'm like, oh. And I couldn't hold it in. I just all over Mark.
Tommy, all I remember, I think it was that
my
night.
God.
So Dave ends up leaving, right? And it's like at the end of the night, it's like me and Tommy. It's like, I think maybe Justin was with us. And, it's like in New York, the bars stay open later. So it's like 4 a.m, right? And we start out the night in a limo, but we end up in a cab, right? And it's Tommy and I, and I think Justin was with us, and we're taking the cab, and Tommy's like passing out and like waking up halfway through the cab ride to like talk shit, but then like pass out again.
Oh man, yeah.
That's
we
great.
had a great time.
We did.
So I mean, just from that experience alone, we had stripes together.
We did.
And
We
so
did.
that was like, even in a short period of time of like 2 months, intensive filmmaking, we spent at least 16 to 17 hours a day during those 8 weeks together. We got to become very close. He gave me the confidence nod to come out here. I'll take care of you. I promise you.
He was fine on his own.
And it was great. And he did do that and really helped me out. So after I started working at Paradigm and everything, and I got that lead to the book, I left Paradigm, started up my own production company, and then pursued the 13-year journey to make Kill the Irishman, which is a story in itself. But then, I felt really good because I got a real piece of property, and that property allowed me to go into almost every door in Hollywood with like I had a really good screenwriter that wrote something. He was represented at the time at CAA, and I knew that was like the big agency. So there was a lot of stuff. And then there was a lot of people that took my project and put their name on it without my name. And like, I just got submitted your movie. I'm like, I own that thing, baby.
By the way,
It's mine.
I mean, it was a 13-year journey, but I mean, to me, it felt very fast. And, you know, this guy, from 1 minute, he's telling me, I don't know if I'm going to move to LA. What do you think? Should I move to? I'm like, Tommy, come to LA. He's like, I don't know. I don't know anybody. I have my sister and I know you, but I don't really know a lot of people. And the next thing I know, the guy's producing a movie starring Christopher Walken, like a giant fucking movie.
It was great. It was awesome.
So you were navigating kind of like the business side of Hollywood.
Yep,
So you
absolutely.
kind of, well, now, out of curiosity, because obviously you went to school for economics, not film, and then realized later that like this is where I want to be. Did your sister have the same thing with acting, or was it just like let's try this creative endeavor? Like where did that come from? That you're both now out here. She's following front of the house, and you're kind of learning all the business side.
So she's been doing it since she was literally a kid. She did her first movie was in Return to Salem's Lot that Robert, I think Gary Cohen, the writer, big writer, wrote and directed Return to Salem's Lot, which is a vampire movie. And that was her big first film that she's ever done. But she was doing kid commercials and McDonald's commercials since she was literally
in Jersey, or
they picked her out of the mall, like literally walking. Some agent came in and said like, I want, and my mom's like, I don't know about that.
Do you want to go to Barbizon?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, like, but like it was literally like she started booking gigs, and her agent wasn't like those where they take like, you know, well, it's going to cost you $1,500 to sign up here.
Right.
They actually, so she was getting work, and then she went to the professional children's school in New York City, where one of her closest friends, and all those friends are still her friends, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jerry O'Connell, Macaulay Culkin.
Right.
So she grew up with Donald Faison coming to my house parties when I was in high school, because they were like, what's a real party like, you know, because everyone's famous in New York.
Right.
This is a high school party where we're just doing keg stands in the back of my woods. You know, like literally, you know, that's what we're trying to do.
So she was already embedded in that world.
So she always did that, you know, and then she felt, and Tara and I are like, you know, a set of Irish twins, so we're very close. And I grew up always protecting her and being her best friend, but also she's a big pain in the ass to me too, because I'm the oldest. So there's pros and cons to all that, and I love her to death. But I knew that I needed to have my own social life and couldn't be, you know, responsible for her introducing me to everyone, because half the people I'm like, they don't even know who the fuck you are. Like, you know, like they don't want to know you. All they know is that now you just did the Big Lebowski, and they don't even care about me or anybody else from your past or your mom and dad, if they're alive or not. They don't even ask questions like that, because they're a fucking Penske or whatever it is, you know, and like they're an heir to something. There's no substance there at all. So I could find out the leeches and the jet setters really quick. And I think that's what Dan really liked about me, is that I was a very honest, true kid, that I'm like, that guy's a douche. That guy's, you know, I don't care if he's got a fucking $100 million, you know, whatever.
I would have liked him in high school for sure.
For sure. I was way different than everybody else, but I'm also an asshole.
Me,
you know, so it's like, I get it,
you know. That's what I'm saying.
And like, I would rather have you either like me or hate me. Don't give me the gray area in between, you know, because I know you're going to go talk shit on me.
I got to tell you something though, as he's talking about, and then I get what you say when you say I'm kind of an asshole, but Tommy's got these core values of family that are like stronger than anybody you'll ever meet.
He's Irish.
I mean, his parents, who are no longer with us, rest their souls, they were the most welcoming, the most inviting. And I see what you're doing with your kids, the dad that you are. And, you know, it's funny because when we're talking about introducing Tommy, and I said introduce him as a husband and a father, because that's really a huge part of who he is, besides being a producer, besides being Tara Reid's brother. He's a father. And he's not only that, he's made, you know, he's got this, what is it, Dad's Night podcast.
Yeah,
we're gonna get into that. But it's being a dad is such a part of who you are. You're a coach, you're a dad, I know that it comes from your dad too.
Absolutely, it comes from my dad. And even back in film school, you would talk about the business side of how important it was in Hollywood, because your dad would manage a lot of the wealth for a lot of big people out here. And so being an accountant to understand the money, you always say it's show business for a reason. Okay. So you embedded the business side of learning how to be a producer. So I knew that in order to be a good producer in Hollywood, You got to not only pay your dues and start from a mailroom and eat the shit and live off of $380 and go to Taco Tuesday off of Wilshire, for a long time. But you then had to be respectful of it's a process, your time will come, but you have to understand the business. And those that can endure will be rewarded.
And this is a funny thing too. I mean, Tommy met me, and my background. My dad was in the business, and Tommy says, when I move out there, you're gonna, kind of like take me under your wing. You're gonna introduce me to people. Last year, a friend of mine's trying to make a movie. I'm like, we got to go talk to Tommy. He knows how to get a movie made. How the tables have turned.
Yeah.
And before we get into what you're doing now, I want to talk about one other movie made that I absolutely love, which is I Know That Voice.
Hats off to John DiMaggio right there,
Yeah.
Bender of Futurama. He is, a staple, another like a very pinnacle guy growing, paying my dues up in Hollywood at the time and everything, been a buddy for a very long time. He is in that industry and not many people know about what goes on in voice acting and what goes on with that. And now the surge of video games becoming $200 million opening weekends for Halo and stuff like that. So I Know That Voice is kind of like a master class and everything voiceover.
I just asked you if you did voiceover because you have a great voice. Okay, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and we literally had to cut 186 one-hour interviews into a 2-hour documentary, which is really hard to see. How do you get a soundbite from June Foray, is one of the greatest, little in the original Dr. Seuss and the Grinch, she's like Tiny Tina, what I mean?
Right.
And then she's like, so her voice goes on and everything. But she and all these other actors that are from Noel Blanc's son, and how man of 10,000 voices, to Matt Groening, to just literally Nancy Cartwright.
Oh, yeah.
It was like every person could be a master class.
It's an amazing movie. Like, if you ever get a chance to check it out, it really is.
It won the 2013 Annie Award, which is like the Oscars for animation, as best documentary. So thank you for acknowledging that.
It's a great movie. I really enjoyed it a lot. Really,
it's great. Good. So what you need to have here on your podcast is have a bowl of green apples, because when you bite into a green apple, it takes the pectin out of your mouth and mouth clicks go away.
Wow.
If you go to any voiceover in the Valley, which is, they're all like lined up on Burbank, right there. Mm-hmm. They have, in the green room, they have a bunch of green apples. You'll want to see that.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Because everyone walks in with their coffee.
Yeah.
But the milk is what gives you the mouth clicks. So, but it was
make
kind of
one
weird.
movie, you become an expert.
Oh, my goodness.
It was fun. So I'm in it. I love being part of the industry. And
so when you moved to LA, you started working in it. Now you've done all these movies, but you started to mention something about like the early years in LA. We've heard about your New York years. The early years, your sister just did a big movie. You're living up in the hills, Runyon Canyon, having parties.
Yep.
Now that you've like experienced the good stuff of LA, like what? How was that?
So I was still living at the Pinnacle, which is a very famous, first move to LA. I'm going to go live in Hollywood, and you're literally like a block and a half north of Hollywood Boulevard. Mm-hmm. On Runyon Canyon, the street, and there's a Pinnacle, the last apartment complex on the right-hand side, right before the entrance of Runyon.
I think I knew someone.
It's called the Pinnacle. And everyone would walk there. You always see the famous people. And so I recruited like literally about 6 or 7 Buckeyes to move out here and endure or see what the hell they wanted to do in every kind of industry. So from actors to accountants to whatever, just come out in LA and hang out. And there'd be like 3 or 4 guys crashing on a couch, while 2 guys had their bedrooms, and it was like rotating people that come in for this month.
By this time, Tommy was on his own.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you're good. You're good.
Basically, after living in the Pinnacle from 97 to 98, my dad's like, for the amount of money of like $1,500 a month, you're paying for your 1 bedroom, you can buy a condo or a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm like, I'll do that. So then I wind up buying an apartment down the street for like $190,000. 3 years later, flip it for $400,000. Hollywood started rising in that late 90s. So did we. Yeah. And so that's when things started popping. Tara's career was really starting to get going. She had success in Big Lebowski, then did a movie that was about to come out about high school, and it was American Pie. And then she started getting it. And once I knew that, she went from a small, agent to now ICM and, Adam Vennett over in Endeavor.
And that was a crazy time too, because her star was rising, But at times, she was taking some beatings in the press. How was that for you? How did that affect you?
I mean, I can give you a great example. I remember I knew the time that she finally hit it was when she had her birthday party at Mike DeLuca's house up in the canyons.
Yep. Who's a big producer?
Huge producer. I had New Line at the time.
Yep.
And she was hanging out with Paris Hilton. And she allowed me to bring like 6 of my college buddies, buddies that moved out from LA or out to LA from New York and Ohio. And so we would be there, like her core, because the other ones were, and then here comes Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Paris Hilton's got a pocket full of like 300 pills of ecstasy and like handing them out at the party. It was crazy. I mean, literally people, the Legion of Doom,
to cut you off, and that's when it's funny because once you start to make it, and she really, her star was rising, and now the press is like really interested in her personal life, which is like, and that's like, and of course they want to build you up to take you down kind of thing. And so I think she was going through that and maybe not even realizing that she was going through that at the time.
Well, that's when Dublin's on Sunset was going off.
Yeah.
Like Pantera Sarah. And,
Right.
And they talked about that whole book or whatever I remember that vividly, like trying to get her to get us in and me and my stupid buddies because Tara's already in there and I'm just the brother.
Why don't you call me?
Yeah, exactly. Because you were already up there too with Vince Vaughn and all those guys, okay? But like that's when that whole era of the late 90s, that was a different part of Hollywood. It was so fun. We had the best time out here.
So fun.
Because not everyone had the cell phones to come out with cameras and everything. So it was like still had some intimacy, some privacy. Tara was like hanging around people that, were friends with Leonardo DiCaprio. So it was a really fun time to be her brother and run with her to a lot of parties at the time. It really was. I mean, and I got to, it was always like Tara plus like 6, and their 6 was like me and my buddies from Ohio State. So
I'm pretty sure I put you on the list because I briefly worked for Rick Calamaro.
Oh, yeah.
Like I just did his Friday list and like all the publicists would call me. And I'm pretty sure it was like Tara Reid plus 8.
Yeah. It was something stupid.
That sounds about right.
It was like, how are you going to get 8 dudes in?
Yeah.
And we would get in and we would just have fun because we were just young 20-year-olds and just being able to have access to like very highbrow celebrity parties in Hollywood. And it was just great. And then, and just knowing these guys too, it was just so much fun.
He was off and running from the minute he got in.
Then I didn't want to leave. Now I'm like, I kind of like it here,
Right. You're like, these are nice houses up in the hills.
Yeah, but I knew I didn't want to live up there because of the mudslides, which...
I think I'm moving down to the beach.
But that's where I did. I'd always go down to like Hermosa and have the best time ever. And, you were just like, let me get down there. And then you have a totally different world down in the South Bay. And that's why I love it so much.
And you come down to the South Bay, you get married, you have some kids. You're now this father, husband. Tell us about that.
Best thing that ever happened in my life was get married.
Yeah.
And I have the greatest wife in the world.
You do.
Met her up in San Francisco, so I met her in California too. Right. We wind up living a block and a half over from each other in Manhattan Beach that we never even knew it. So in 2002, when I moved down, when I sold Hollywood, went down to Manhattan Beach, had this place, and I'm like, there's no way I can afford like a $950,000 house. So my dad's like, well, go get your stoner college buddies to live and rent some rooms out. So that's exactly what I did. I had to rent out like every room so I could afford to want to be a producer still and then pay for my mortgage and taxes and then be able to, now I got to get some odd jobs to just pay for my livelihood. So living down the South Bay in 2002, went up to just playing back to Hollywood, living in the South Bay, loved it so much down there. Knew I wanted to raise my family down there because it's very, very communal for family. Manhattan Beach especially. In 2008, I went up to San Francisco while taking a break from making The Whiffler, which I just shot, that movie that I directed and produced. And I was in the editing room for 10 weeks straight. I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. I went up to San Fran, met my wife at a bar, and then finding out she was from New Jersey. She loves football. And it was just like, oh my God, how do I keep this one? And lucky enough, she said yes to marry me after 9 months. She's like, I have to date for at least a year.
Boggles my mind.
Yeah, I married up. I married the greatest girl ever. But
she's a gorgeous wife. She's a sweetheart. She loves football. She puts up with him.
Yeah, puts up with me. She's an amazing mom. She's my partner in crime. She believes in me, believes everything we're doing. Great mom. Loves the family aspect too. Comes from a really good family. All from New Jersey, and there's much.
Her family's from New Jersey too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And just a sweetheart.
That's great.
So they're from also North Jersey, but from Bridgewater. So she was literally the Lincoln Tunnel, and I was like the George Washington Bridge to come over.
Oh my gosh.
Into New York City.
Literally bridge and tunnel.
Yeah, we're bridge
Love
and
it.
tunnel. Yeah.
Love
So
it. How long have you guys been together?
Since 2008, but married since 2010. So 13 years, going on 14 years.
Yeah. And you have
2 kids.
2 kids. Great.
11 and 8.
That's something else.
Yeah, boy, girl, snipped, done.
But now, and he's turned that into like, are you still doing the podcast?
We took a break. So my buddy Chris Parrish, who's my partner on Dad's Night podcast.
Yeah.
We just wanted to do a podcast that was like, hey, let's bring in celebrity dads.
Yep.
But let's like maybe just rip off like, what are we promoting right now? But let's just talk about you got to where you are and then talk about dad stuff.
Yep.
And that was like the coolest thing is identify like, okay, I know you just won 3 Super Bowls, Ty Law, and you're in the middle of like going through the airport and your kid has a breakdown. How are you going to handle that?
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, no one cares that you're Ty Law.
Yeah.
You know, like, what are you going to do?
Your kid certainly doesn't.
Tommy, I mean, Tommy also is like, you know, he's created this kind of like community of dads too. He does this big dad's fishing trip every year.
Yep.
He does these like couple dad's nights where like, you know, he'll give away tomahawk steaks.
That's right.
Like,
I love that.
Yep.
You
like,
identify with being a dad
He
in a
really
great
does.
way. It's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a communal thing and dads go through a lot of stuff. And once you get married, you're usually the low man on the totem pole. And just to kind of get together to talk about problems or issues that are happening, you know, or just talking about, hey, I have an idea. What do you think about this idea? Like recently we had a VIP seltzer tasting this past Thursday and I became a 1% owner in the company. And I'm like, well, if I want in, I bet you there's about another, you know, at least 10 dads that I know will want the same thing that I got in. So before you go pre-Series A, fly out, bring out a lot of your product. So they brought out like 36 cases of beer, like a whole thing of it, or of seltzer. And I'm like, I'm not a seltzer guy. So after a couple, you know, we'll probably hit the Coors Light, but eventually like, give us your pitch. We're going to be Shark Tank. And it was a dad Shark Tank.
And he's like that. He always has these products. I have the cool cabana. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah. I mean, Tommy always has like a product. Put in the code Tommy Rocks. You're going to get a discount.
Like, I can get that sponsored.
You know,
That's right.
He will. He will like.
I have a friend like you.
He will get on the phone with the company. He say, "I love this thing. I got 20 friends that'll buy it. Give me a code, then get a discount. I'll promote it to all my friends."
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So the guys did great. They wind up raising like 150, 200,000 that night.
Yeah.
There was like another 8 guys that went in that wanted the same value and everything that I got.
I have another business that Tommy's helped me with in the same way, unbelievably so.
That's right.
That's fantastic.
What else is going
Now he does all the lights and now for a Jew coming down to Manhattan Beach, he does all the Christmas lights in Manhattan Beach.
It's good.
It's great.
Tell me about what's going on now. What movies, projects, what's happening?
Well, I'm full-time at Tongle, which is like a global creator economy.
Mm-hmm.
So basically Tongle works making all the social and digital content for large brands from Nike, Lululemon, Lego. They're actually making Pharrell's movie about his life. That's the documentary they're going to do on Pharrell, but it's all on Lego. So that's where anybody who's a filmmaker or an ideator, editor can raise their hand and be put into the creative aspects of pitching on companies' RFPs, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So at an agency, Deutsch, WDB, 72 and Sunny, you have to be part of their roster and get in there, and then you have to be handed a project to go do, and then you have to come up with your treatment. It's like an open community where anybody can pitch their creative aspect of it. So that
interesting.
So that's kind of what's my focus. And then there's a bunch of documentaries that I want to go. There's like 4 documentaries I want to produce, and I'm starting to write a horror film right now with my buddy Mike Kersey. So there's a lot of things that are going to be put from the back burner to front burner. But yeah, just constantly doing stuff and constantly having irons on the fire and trying to help Ohio State win a national championship by getting better recruits.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on that too. So
I know you are.
I'm working on the NIL collector for them, trying to get them Bob Evans, and I have to be NIL sponsors.
So you're a doer.
He is a doer.
You're a doer.
I think you guys come from a very unique upbringing, and to hear about when I saw you starting to ask, questions, I'm like, what's your podcast called? 90who10 is a really cool name.
Yeah.
I think you got some traction there.
Awesome.
And I'm thankful you were, you asked me to come on board.
I appreciate you coming on, man.
Hopefully I at least make an an internet clip
I
somewhere.
like it. We got some
On
reels.
Instagram.
Yeah, for
We'll
sure.
make sure
Check it
it's a
out.
good one. No, it's been so nice to get to know you because now I'm like, I know you started some stories that we need to finish once we
Yes.
go off camera,
Yeah. See,
for
like,
sure.
that's-
I'm like, there's a Hugh Hefner story somewhere
Yes,
in there.
there is.
Tell a Hugh
Well,
Hefner
tell
story.
the Hugh Hefner
before
story
we
for
go.
fuck's
Yeah, I
sake.
mean,
That's a good one. Let's end on that one.
Ohio State was playing UCLA in 2001, and that's where Tara literally did American Pie 1 or 2. And so I think 1 came out, was a huge hit. 2 is about to come out that next year or something like that. So Tara brought in Sean William Scott, who's Stifler. So they would. So I knew they were coming to my party. And a buddy knew some girl and that could get to Hugh Hefner, and they were going to make a stop by for sure. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I tell Ohio State friends, I'm like, I think Hugh Hefner's going to come to our party and everything like that. Well, I knew that he was coming when they told us you got to save 20 seats in a corner. I'm like, oh shit, he's really going to come. And it would blow my Buckeyes minds. Like, there's Stifler for American Pie. And then when Hugh Hefner comes in and brings in like all those broads, playmates, that's my jersey coming out right there. That
the 90s me didn't even notice.
Yeah,
That's the
Exactly.
thing.
Listen, that was where he was on the height of going up. He had a resurgence.
It was huge.
And that was the time, right?
Yeah.
Then 2001.
Oh, yeah. He had the
because-
girls next door. and he was living his last good years.
And I don't know. So I think Tara, I don't know if she was with Carson Daly or not by that time, but like, I think Tara and Carson might have been together at the time too.
Yep.
So I don't know if Carson was there too, maybe, but maybe that's how it was all connected. But like, it was like that Friday before the Saturday for the Ohio State UCLA game, which we lost, but it was still, to this day, people are like, I can't believe you went out there and you had a party and you after a game. So it was pretty fun. It kind of solidified like, okay, I'm in LA now.
Yeah. I mean, once you've got Hugh Hefner at a party, you've made it. Tommy Reid, I love you, man. Your friendship is something I cherish. What a beginning we had at the New York Film Academy. You moving out here, so much success in films. I can't be more proud of you. But not just that, success as a father and a husband, one of the greatest people I know. And thanks for being on the podcast, man. I really, really appreciate it.
DM them, slide into their DM and say, what's it cost to put out? This was brought to you by
VIP hard seltzer.
VIP
Exactly.
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So let's start getting some sponsorships, people. Let's go.
Tommy's our new agent. Well, that wraps up this episode of 90who10. Thank you so much to our guest, Tommy Reid, for coming. It's been great to get to know you. We'll be back soon with another episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find us on all the platforms. If you want to see what we look like, you can go to YouTube. I can't stomach watching myself, but I hope you enjoy it. See you next time.